Good afternoon. Good afternoon to colleagues who are following us online and also here in the Palais, in the media. It is an honor to have the Secretary General of the United Nations with us today, the Minister of Economy and Trade and Business of Spain, Mr. Carlos Cuerpo, of course, Secretary General of UN Trade and Development, UNCTAD, Rebeca Grynspan, and Li Junhua, Under Secretary General of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, for the launch of the Sevilla Forum of UNCTAD. The speakers will speak in that order, and then the Secretary General will need to depart, and the Minister, the Secretary General, and the Under Secretary General will remain to take your questions. Secretary General, please, the floor is yours.
Queridos amigos, Cuerpo, Li y Grynspan, ladies and gentlemen of the media, today's launch is a critical step in bringing to life the Sevilla Commitment and the Sevilla Platform for Action, both announced at June's 4th International Financing for Development Conference. The conference and its outcomes highlighted a key truth. Development is not an abstraction. Development is about families getting enough to eat. It's about children gaining an education. It's about putting health care within reach of all people. It's about clean water and sanitation. And it's about countries creating jobs and opportunities for their people. But around the world, developing countries face a serious barrier to development: debt. Borrowing should work for, not against, developing countries. But countries are getting crushed. Developing countries spend $1.4 trillion on annual debt service. 61 of them spent 10% or more of their government revenues on interest payments last year. And 3.4 billion people live in countries that spend more on servicing debt than on health or education. Countries should never have to choose between servicing their debt or serving their people. In Sevilla, countries agreed to take action to lower borrowing costs, enable fair and timely debt restructuring, and prevent debt crises from happening in the first place. But we all know the resistance that exists in relation to these transformations. The Sevilla Commitment set an ambitious and integrated roadmap to make this happen. And this includes a borrower's platform to give developing countries a greater voice in the debt architecture and new efforts to develop principles for responsible sovereign borrowing and lending. I never forget in a recent meeting in Paris when the President of Zambia was describing the operation to restructure the debt in Zambia, telling us that everybody was talking with everybody except Zambia. This is something that obviously is not acceptable. So, a borrower's platform is essential to give voice in the debt architecture to developing countries and to create principles for responsible sovereign borrowing and lending. Alongside this work, the Sevilla Platform for Action included 130 specific initiatives to help developing countries channel public and private finance to the areas of greatest need. The Sevilla Forum on Debt we are launching today is one of the most eagerly anticipated ones. Hosted by Spain with the support of the United Nations, the forum will bring together all partners, including developed and developing countries alike, and finance ministers and creditors, in a global dialogue on debt. The forum will sustain political action on the agreement on debt reached in Sevilla, while developing technical pathways to bring them to life. And this includes taking forward the commitment to consolidate and uphold principles on responsible borrowing and lending. And it includes gathering new ideas to advance debt architecture reform, which is long overdue. Ladies and gentlemen, the Sevilla Forum on Debt will help deliver the financial justice that people and countries need and deserve. And the United Nations is proud to be part of these efforts. And I thank Minister Cuerpo and the government of Spain for their tireless efforts in this regard. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. I now give the floor to Minister of Economy, Trade and Business of Spain, Minister Carlos Cuerpo. Ministro, por favor.
Muito obrigado, querido Antonio. Dear Secretary General of the UN, Secretary General of the UNCTAD, dear Rebeca, querida Rebeca, and Undersecretary General of UNDESA, dear Liam. I'm deeply honored to be here today to announce the launch of the Sevilla Forum on Debt, one of the key proposals, as the Secretary General just said, during the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development that we just held in Sevilla, taking place in July, as you all know. The Sevilla conference did actually mark a turning point, and I think there is broad consensus on this. 192 countries confirmed in the Compromiso de Sevilla their willingness to work together to renew the global financing for development framework. 130 initiatives were presented by coalitions of countries, international financial institutions, and other stakeholders under the Sevilla Platform for Action. Initiatives aiming or focusing on addressing debt vulnerabilities. Let me stress the importance of this platform for action because it benefits from coalitions of actors willing to move forward and generating change. In this case, addressing debt vulnerabilities as a matter of priority, and with a clear commitment to follow up and stay that course of line. Let me mention two initiatives that are already in motion with the support of several countries, international institutions as well, and even the private sector. The first one is a debt pause clause alliance amid the mainstreaming automatic aimed at mainstreaming automatic suspension debt clauses in sovereign financing agreements and extending the use of these debt pause clauses to the private sector as well. The second one is a global hub for debt swaps, which we just launched together with the World Bank last week in the annual meetings of the IMF and the World Bank, and which is aimed at also serving as a permanent multilateral platform to unlock the potential of these instruments of the debt for development swaps. And today, we continue to go ahead with specific deliverables coming out of the Sevilla conference, establishing this Sevilla Forum on Debt. The idea for this is to have space for dialogue, to have an inclusive platform, as the Secretary General just said, that can foster constructive and forward-looking discussions. It will support the articulation of a consolidated set of voluntary guiding principles on responsible sovereign borrowing and lending, and follow, of course, on the different initiatives that were started or kick-started as Sevilla deliverables. Beyond this, of course, also the Forum on Debt will support knowledge generation and capacity building, which is key for developing countries, providing access to technical expertise on debt sustainability, governance, restructuring, amongst others. A space for candid discussion on much-needed proposals, bold, if they may, to actually, of course, go ahead, reform and revamp our system, generating political traction to bring about change. So it will complement existing institutions, working with them and feeding into existing mechanisms such as the Paris Club, the Global Sovereign Debt Roundtable, as well as the emerging borrowers platform, a valuable addition to this international architecture. The Sevilla Forum, therefore, arrives at the juncture of heightened economic uncertainty, rising sovereign debt, and the need to innovate also in terms of financial solutions. Spain has showed determination in Sevilla, and we stand by that commitment, and we stand ready to build on our agreements. We will continue, of course, working with the UN, with UNDESA, with UNCTAD, and other relevant partners to advance that forum, to advance its establishment over the coming months with a permanent representation in Sevilla and hoping to have a kickoff, actually, level meeting in the first quarter of 2026. So we hope to count with all actors to be able to contribute to ensure that the forum actually becomes a meaningful lever for more inclusive, balanced, and sustainable global debt architecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Cuerpo. Gracias, Ministro. I now give the floor to the Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, Secretary General Rebeca Grynspan.
Secretary General Guterres, dear Minister Cuerpo, querido Ministro, dear Undersecretary General Lee, ladies and gentlemen, the launch of the Sevilla Forum on Debt marks a real breakthrough. We are proud that the 16th United Nations Conference of Trade and Development has been chosen as the stage for this important step. Here we put the focus on developing countries, on what debt means for their economies and for people's lives. Secretary General Guterres and Minister Cuerpo have already spoken about the challenges we face and the solutions this forum will provide. So allow me to add just one more point. If you look at the capital markets, at the bond markets, the world is not in crisis. Things look stable. There have been no major sovereign defaults since 2022. It's easy to mistake this for success because markets are not suffering, but people are. Right now, countries are avoiding default not by growing their economies, but by slashing budgets, as the Secretary General said, for hospitals, for schools, and infrastructure. Today, as was said, 3.4 billion people live in countries that spend more on servicing the debt than on health or education. It was 3.3 billion people before. So maybe you think it's the same number, 3.3, 3.4. No, it's 100 million people more living in countries that spend more in servicing the debt than on health or education. This isn't resilience. It's a slow erosion of development, one budget cut at a time. The absence of a financial crisis is not the same as stability or prosperity. True stability means countries can plan beyond the next payment, invest in their future, and build, not just survive. What we have now is perpetual crisis management dressed up as normality. This Sevilla Forum on Debt offers a path from that fragile balance to genuine stability and prosperity, not through quick fixes, but through the patient work of building an architecture where debt serves development instead of consuming it, where creditors and borrowers and different stakeholders, academia, private sector, coordinate before crisis hit, where principles guide practice, where lessons learned in one country can inform another. I repeat, this is a great breakthrough. Minister Cuerpo, by hosting this forum, Spain is ensuring that the Compromiso de Sevilla endures well beyond the headlines. You're giving it permanence, resources, institutional weight. UNCTAD and UNDESA stand ready with decades of technical expertise to make this forum deliver real outcomes. The Sevilla commitment was the promise. This forum is how we deliver. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General Grynspan. I now give the floor to the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, Mr. Lin Junhua. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Moderator. Good afternoon, dear members of the press. It is a great honor and pleasure to join the Secretary General and also Minister of Economy and Trade, and also my dear sister, to launch, to witness this special event, to launch this Sevilla Forum on debt. 3.5 months ago, world leaders gathered in Sevilla, Spain, endorsed a landmark document, the Compromiso de Sevilla, charting a new path for the sustainable financing. So today we'll see the first delivery. The Sevilla commitment marked a pivotal moment in our efforts to build a fairer, more development-oriented debt architecture. Let me just highlight the 4 dimensions on addressing the debt challenges. Number 1, prevent debt crisis. Number 2, lower borrowing costs. Number 3, reform the international debt architecture. Number 4, improve the debt sustainability and the credit assessment. These commitments adopted by the world leaders are complementary to the initiatives in Sevilla Platform for Action, which offers practical solutions to translate the vision into the results. Spain's leadership has been instrumental in this regard. The ultimate test, however, lies in implementing the full package of the debt actions, such as the borrowers platform, an initiative to update and better implement the principles for responsible sovereign borrowing and lending, and the intergovernmental process at the United Nations to close the gaps in the debt architecture. This is where the Sevilla Forum on debt can be our catalyst for the action. As the platform for the inclusive dialogue, the Sevilla Forum can help to build the political momentum and the convergence around the key actions. Such dialogue can be underpinned by strengthened technical collaboration and work streams. The forum can support the work on consolidated borrowing and lending principles. It can also be a center of knowledge and learning and the catalyst for greater uptake of the debt pools clauses and the debt swaps linked to the Sevilla Platform for the Action initiatives. So this forum is a crucial informal and inclusive space to generate ideas and mobilize multi-stakeholder support. It can build both political support and the evidence-based for decision-making at the United Nations later on. Together, we can and we should turn the promise of the Sevilla into the tangible progress for all. Here we witness the first one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can now take a moment to allow the Secretary General of the United Nations to depart. Thank you. We'll take questions in a minute, allowing him to depart.